totally.
Well, I don't care. Yeah, of course you're sorry for my loss. But that doesn't do anything. I love you does everything.
You know why though? Because when you've lost someone that you love so much, you feel alone already.
Yeah.
And that helps you feel less alone because you're
Yeah.
reminded that you're loved.
Loved. Hmm.
It's really
Absolutely
important.
right. Yeah.
Hello, hello, Heal Squad. Welcome back. Glad to be with you here in studio today. We have a great episode with a friend today that I am so excited to share with you guys. She wrote this really amazing book called Think You'll Be Happy. Moving through grief with grit, grace, and gratitude. I'm going to share all that with you in just a moment. But first, our quote of the day. You can't truly heal from a loss until you allow yourself to really feel the loss. And that is from Mandy Hale. Friends, I'm so excited about today's episode. My friend Nicole Avant is my guest today. She wrote this really incredible book called Think You'll Be Happy. Moving through grief with grit, grace, and gratitude. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and share why she wrote this book. And I know you're going to love this episode and you're going to love her. Nicole Avant is an accomplished author, producer, former U.S. ambassador to the Bahamas. She was nominated by President Barack Obama. She became the first African-American woman to hold that position. She was focused on key initiatives such as economic development, education, women's empowerment, alternative energy, and disability awareness. And she recently released this memoir, Think You'll Be Happy, like I said, where she gives a raw and courageous look into how she found the light in her darkest moment and reminds us that grief is different for everyone and that we have the power to move through it in our own unique way. The book has received critical acclaim from the likes of Oprah, Tyler Perry, so much more. She shares not only her upbringing and her family story, but the night that her mom was murdered tragically and how she got through it. And I think you're going to find it very inspiring, and I think you're going to love her story. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Nicole Avant. I spent the day with you yesterday. It was a rainy day here in LA, and I spent the day reading your latest book, Think You'll Be Happy. And friends, the book is not just titled Think You'll Be Happy because Nicole thinks you'll be happy. There's a deeper meaning behind that we will get to. But Nicole, it's funny. I interviewed you on this show about your dad.
Yep.
And the documentary that you made about him called The Black
Hmm.
Godfather, which was incredible. And I'd been friends with your brother Alex for years and had no idea that your dad was this like unbelievable force in music behind the scenes, and not just music, politics and beyond. And we had this great conversation, which, friends, you should go back and listen to because that documentary everybody should see. But then this book is a bit of a memoir,
Hmm.
and also tells the story of the night you lost your mom and how you moved through grief with grace, grit, and gratitude, which your mom taught you. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, reading the book, I felt like I was learning how to parent my daughter,
Mm,
and
I love that.
I'd like want to cry because it was really beautiful.
You.
What your parents taught you, what the people around you taught you. You lived a very extraordinary life, and the way you moved through such a tragic incident and the way you handled it was so inspiring and beautiful, and you shared it with everybody. So thank you for having the courage to put pen to paper on a subject that is that tough. I wonder, what was that journey like for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for even I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation. I want to start by saying that because I think I ran into you right before the book was coming out, and I
Mm-hmm.
had told you just a little bit, and you were so gracious when my mother had passed, and so kind, so gracious, and your words of just life. You know, we were so life affirming that night. Remember, we were at Irina and Mike's house,
Mm-hmm.
and the three of us, Kevin, you were standing in this corner and talking about what had just happened. And I have to say, writing the book helped me move through the grief in a way that I needed to move through the grief. And the book I wanted to put out to the world as an offering. It wasn't about, oh, look at me, I'm writing a memoir, look at me, look at me. It was, oh my God, I hope and pray that I can take this pain that I'm going through and make it purposeful in some way, shape, or form. And there is no right way to grieve, wrong way to grieve, all these steps, all these things, different books. And I wanted my book to hope, to bring hope and inspiration and restoration to anyone who listened to it, anyone who read it. And that was my, honestly, that was my prayer because grief hits all of us in different ways, but none of us get to go through this life without experiencing sadness, without experiencing challenges, without experiencing some type or some form of grief. And for me, the reason we put moving through grief is because it really was important for me to share that, yes, while I was in pain and while I was suffering with anger and sadness, I was still moving through life at the same time. I made a
Mm-hmm.
conscious decision not to get paralyzed and stuck in the grief, by the grief, wearing it like a coat every day. I knew that's the way my mom did not want me to live.
Yeah, well, it's evident by even how you responded to that first phone call. And before we
Mm-hmm.
even get to that, like I'm just going to go back to that party where we were at Irina and
Yeah.
Mike's because you never know, even when you've gone through stuff, how to bring something up, how to let people know that you're acknowledging something's happened,
Mm-hmm.
and then also not wanting to like upset somebody. And you know, your mom passed in a really tragic accident, something that was just so horrific that I know it makes a lot of us uncomfortable to bring it up, but the way you just were so open made it so much easier to talk about it. And I thank you for that because you always want to be there for people, but sometimes you don't know how to properly
Right.
do it. And you share in this book, one of the things that I say, even with my mom's illness and passing, is just show up.
Yes,
And
that's
and
it.
we'll get into kind of all of your grief tips, but moving through with grit, grace, and gratitude is one thing, but you get the call that your mom had been shot and was at Cedar Sinai, and
Mm-hmm.
you still brushed your teeth, fed your dogs, let them
Yeah,
out. And as I'm reading this, I wrote question mark what?
yeah, yeah.
Like I take notes as I'm reading, and I was like, how
I
did you
know.
do that?
When I
But
wrote
then
the book, I said to myself, how did I even, it was so shocking. So your body goes into complete shock. And I first fell to my knees. My knees started to wobble because I stood up and I was looking at the phone. My husband said, your mom's been shot. We don't know what. Then, of course, we find out it's a home invasion, whatever. And, but the dogs are looking at me and I'm looking at and dogs know, they knew something was wrong and they could hear me frantic on the phone with my husband. And it was so interesting. I remember just looking at the bathroom. I brushed my teeth really quickly. I threw on a hat. I got dressed. And then I looked at the dogs and I thought, I don't even. And I just ran downstairs and it was almost as if my body it went into some type of state where it just went into repetition. So I was doing the things that I would do every day, but in a different moment. But it was interesting that it actually calmed me down. It didn't mean that I still rushed out of the house. I moved as quickly as I could, but I was in a very strange way focused. There
Mm-hmm.
was something about not being manic. There was something about there was no man, and I think had the dogs not been there, had I don't know what it was, but there was a oh my God, I have to be, I'm still responsible for I had no
Yeah.
idea when I was coming home. It was about responsibility. And my mom would always say to me, Maria, all the time, because she was so strict about being responsible. And she'd say, you have to understand the meaning of the word. You have to have the ability to respond to life. You have to be able to respond at whatever life throws at you. It's not about reacting all the time, but you do have to respond. All of us have to respond to your as you've talked about so openly. A different diagnosis here, something that the doctor tells you. It's the response, the ability to respond, and hopefully in the best right way in that moment.
Yeah.
And I got in the car and I started talking to my mom because that's the only thing I knew how to do. That was my way of responding. That would keep. No, I wasn't trying to control my heart rate or control myself, but I was also trying to. You you can I cannot explain the shock and the trauma and the stress that immediately your body is trying to protect you. So your body is doing things that you're not even telling it to do. And I noticed that once I started praying and once I started speaking to my mom directly, just energetically, I noticed that I was responding in a way that allowed me to be as present and focused on her behalf as I possibly could.
Yeah. And it was later in the book that you said I still had responsibility. And I thought that that was so interesting. And even hearing you talk about how it calmed you in a sense, even though you're moving as quickly as you could. But talking to your mom on the way, those were technically your last words to her.
Yeah, yeah.
And you
I mean,
told her everything would be okay and that you would take care of everybody. I just
yes,
thought that it was interesting. Your mind was already, you must have been feeling
yes.
what her, maybe even her transition.
I think I was. I think I was feeling her transition because I look back at the time now and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh my gosh, she was probably transitioning at that time. And
Chills.
I felt her presence with me. And I just knew to say, Mom, I'll take care of Dad. My dad was 91. I mean, he was 1 month, it was just a couple months shy of 91. And I just remember saying, I'll take care of everything and everyone. And I that's all that kept coming out. And I do believe that it was her transitioning because it was, she was 81. She's, shot and she's shot in her lower abdomen. And let's say she did survive it. Honestly, Maria, she would have been probably, I'd have to institutionalize her because the trauma of that at 81 or at any age is horrific. The surgeries, the multiple surgeries she would have had to have. I mean, it just would have been a complete, continuous disaster
Yeah.
and not the way she would have wanted to live. That I know. You knew my mom. I mean, my mom
Mm-hmm.
was the classiest, most elegant, most put together woman. So the idea that it would be different, she was like, I'm out. This is the train. She always used to say to me, a train is coming for everybody, period. Because death is a part of the circle of life. I think we all try to separate that death is over here and here's our circle of life. But she'd always remind me that death is a part of the circle of life that you're talking about, and
And how are you going to respond?
how are you going to respond? And that's why I focused on the gratitude. I focused on I'm going to respond with as much gratitude about my mother and for my mother and towards my mother of how she lived, how she raised us, what she gave to the communities around her, how she raised her family, how she kept everything together. I needed to focus on that as a part of my healing. I was so grateful for having her for 53 years, by the way. I was just telling Ted, would I have responded this way at 13? No.
Yeah.
Would I have responded this way at 23? No. Would I have responded this way at 33? Probably not. I had 53 years of life with her And time does make a difference, and age does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
We pretend it doesn't, but it does. And so I was able to respond as an adult versus a child, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And you see young children around the world today. You turn on the news, it could be, somewhere in the Middle East, it could be in Ukraine, it could be in Africa, wherever, and they are responding. Children are responding every day to real trauma, to real violence, but on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was about focusing on the 53 years that I did have with her and the 81 years that she did have on this earth. And really, every time my imagination or my feelings started going one way and the negative way and the victimized way and the why, and how can this happen? I, on purpose, have to try to, okay, I definitely felt it for sure. But I also told myself, we're going to focus on the things that we're grateful for, and we're going to focus on the 81 years that she did have, and celebrate those 81 years and keep her legacy alive by talking about the great things that she did for other people and the way that she lived.
Yeah. And that isn't easy to do
No.
when, you know, you hear that someone broke into your mom's house and shot her in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is not easy. And in the book, you say this was the man who killed your mother was the very kind of person she was working to help. And it would be so easy, and not that you didn't have these moments, I know you did, where you're like, what the F? I want to gouge this person's eyeballs out and murder them. Like, I can't, you want to hurt them because they hurt the person you love, but then you flipped it. Can you share how you kind of flipped that?
Yeah, because I like that you said that. It's really flipping the script, and it's flipping the mindset. And we all have to be in control of our thoughts as much as we can, and what we say as much as we can. And I flipped it with focusing on the truth, focusing on the positive, focusing on the light. I flipped it by listening to all the music that I did everything that brought me a really great memory about my mom. I would watch the movies that she loved. I'd listen to all the music all of a sudden my Spotify is filled with Johnny Mathis and the Commodores and the Eagles, all the songs that she would play in the car on the way to school, because it flooded back these beautiful memories of her laughing, or her, singing along with the song, or telling me why a certain song meant so much to her, or who she was in love with at the time. And when she was 18 years old and the song came back on the oldie station, or whatever it was. But switching the mindset it's a practice. It's a daily, what it is. I mean, you have to have the intention so my intention was to, yes, shift my mindset to gratitude and grace, and also feel the pain. And you kind of have to do both. So I never
That's a big part of it, because it would sound like you denied the pain and just swept it under the rug, but that's also unhealthy.
Very unhealthy. And I kicked and screamed a lot. I mean, there was one day I just drove in the driveway, and I thought about this to tell you. I drove in the driveway about 3 months after it happened, and out of the blue, because you don't know when grief is going to smack you, in my driveway, I just put the car in park. I hadn't even pulled up the front door, and I was screaming like a maniac. I mean, screaming at the top of my lungs. I was banging my fist onto the steering wheel where I bruised right here. It was, but I had to get it out. I was just, it comes over you and you're so angry. I was angry that I couldn't save her. I was angry that I wasn't there. I was angry that this person hurt my mother, was cruel to my mother, was violent towards my mother. You're so consumed in the moment. And then I went through it, and I didn't deny it. And I remember coming in and laying down, I was like, I got to lay down. And then, though, by the time dinner showed up, didn't mean I wasn't angry, but all of a sudden I was making dinner for my dad, and we were talking about things that made us laugh and trying to tell each other jokes. I mean, it's a roller coaster of emotions, but it's very important during grief to feel it all and not sweep it under a rug.
Yeah.
because it's poison.
Yeah.
And if you deny it, it's just going to live. It's going to live and it's going to feed on everything in your body. And I honestly just decided, I said, I can't give him my life too. I mean, that's what my dad said to me. Are we going to give this person this event? Are we handing over our lives as well? We come from
And
a very,
hers.
yes, exactly. And thank God my mom loved history so much that she would show me things throughout history of anybody. It could be a genocide in Armenia or a civil war in Ireland or in Africa or whatever, where she'd show me suffering, but she'd also show me people who went through the suffering and made a really deep, clear decision to live
Mm-hmm.
and thrive even out of the tragedy.
That's like, was it Victor Rolf's book, The
Yes,
Search for
yes.
Meaning, or whatever, One Man's Search for Meaning?
100%. Yes.
I mean,
Search for
that's,
meaning. And it's yes. I mean, you read about Holocaust survivors all the time. My family, you come out of slavery, then you go into Jim Crow, then they went into civil rights. I mean, it was, you know, every generation is moving, pushing, beaten down every day, but they had this will to live and make the best out of what was given to them in that moment. But it was the will to live and to make the most out of life
mm-hmm.
and to create a life worth living and to create a life of peace and joy, regardless of the circumstance, whatever you could do. Which, by the way, I mean, that's where the jubilees and the hymns and everything, all these things that came while people are in slavery. There are people who are in the Holocaust who wrote the most beautiful poetry. I mean, you never know what, again, that's a decision of the mind and a very strong mindset.
Yeah. Well, your mom taught you that, because I know that you said that she chose to be happy regardless of the circumstances
Yeah,
around her. And
yeah.
that she said choosing to be happy begins with believing you will be happy. And I do think it's a choice. But it's
Mhm.
crazy. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, sometimes I'll hear people that lost their mom and they can't get over it.
Yep.
And it's really, really hard for them. And I said, well, everyone's journey is different. Everyone's relationship is different. But I can't imagine if my mom was taken from me tragically at 20 years old, let's say, or 15 years old, or like in very,
Mhm.
critical times in our lives, if I would be able to get past it. I said, for me, my mom being sick for so long, we had so much time to really grieve, pre-grieve.
Pre-grief. Hmm.
And we also had time to have conversations, and it, listen, there's not a second that goes by, especially with my daughter, that I don't think about my mom, don't talk about my mom. We talk to her every morning. We go through all our church. It's funny.
Yeah.
Athena will point to the light and I'm like, okay, let's open the door and get the light. We get
Yep.
the light. She goes, and then she points to the icons on the wall. And then we go and we
Oh,
touch the Virgin Mary and Jesus and Saint Nectarios, our healing
yes.
saint. And then, yeah, grandma.
Oh, I love that. I
but
love that.
but it is really, really hard. These are tools, these are tips, choosing to be happy and flipping the scripts. And it's easier at our age for sure. But I do think it can be done. And I think that you probably felt a similar calling that I had to almost be a leader in these moments where
Mhm.
we can show people there's another way to grieve. Because there was
Yes.
a moment in the book where you said, I feel like I thought I'm supposed to be in the fetal position, and most people would think I should be in the fetal
Mhm.
position, but I'm choosing to move forward. It doesn't mean that I'm not sad. And I was saying the same thing to people. Like at my mom's funeral, I didn't really cry.
Right. Right.
And there were reasons I didn't cry.
Hmm.
One, I was cried out.
Yep.
Two, I didn't really feel safe with the surroundings, some of the
Hmm.
people, some of the
Hmm.
energy. And so I kind of, blocked off a little. But didn't mean I wasn't crushed. Doesn't mean that I'm
Right.
not sad, but everyone grieves differently, which is something that I think is so important that you share in here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's, I came across somebody at an event a couple months ago, and she was so soul crushed by her mom passing away. And this woman was probably late 40s, early 50s, but literally could not get out of bed, she said. So I said to her, I said, okay, I was trying to help her in any way. I go, what did your mom love to do? What does she love? And she said, oh, she loved cooking every single day she made a meal. And then I said, and what did she love music? She said, yes. And I said, you know what? One start doesn't mean it's going to heal everything. I said, but one, we have to just remember that the pain, I think we all think that grief is going to come and then it's going to leave and it's going to go away. That's not true. I think it gets easier to manage, sure. But like I always say, my heart is in repair. It might be in repair for the rest of my life.
Yep.
It's okay. It's just in repair. That's fine. But I said to this woman, my only advice to her was, I said, I think you should go. My advice is go home and cook. Do what she loves because it'll make you feel closer to
Yeah,
her.
you
That's why when
connect.
you play the music, there's a connection. And you'll start thinking of, once you start thinking of the things and doing the things that the person you lost loved, the energy shifts to a higher vibration and it pulls it up out of, you're still sad, but it still raises the vibration
Hmm.
because it's about what they loved and it reminds you how they lived. And I think it's the best thing that I believe the soul is everlasting. I think it's just I have a different relationship with my mother because she's no longer physically here, but energetically, I believe that she's here. I
Hmm.
don't believe that the soul dies. And so I talk to her. I don't get to see her with my eyes and I don't get to touch her with my hands, but I feel her all of the time. I purposely talk to her all of the time, ask her for advice, just say hi, and the woman wrote me back and said, she wrote me a letter and said, I just want to thank you. I did start cooking and it didn't change immediately, but day by day, things started to get a little easier because I realized I was honoring my mom's life by really living. And I think that is what helped me move through the grief is my intention was I want to honor my mom's life.
Hmm.
And to really honor Jackie Avant, you better get up and live. And you
Yes.
better create because she'd always say, and it's true, we all know this, we all say it, but tomorrow really isn't promised.
Hmm.
We don't know the end date. It's like my dad always loved to say, you come with a number and you end with a number. What are you going to do with your dash? And your dash is your life. You don't know if you get 10 years, 25 years, 100 years. There's some people who live 100 years, didn't do shit for anybody, didn't
Yeah.
didn't make a difference in anyone's life, positive, nothing. And then there's people who live 20 years, 30, and they gave joy, they gave their souls, they gave life, they lived. And life is beautiful and it's tough. It's both. It's challenging. It's kind of, sometimes life shits on everybody in a different way, but it does sometimes, but it's still worth living. You know
I
what I
love
mean?
that. I'm going to use that. Life shits on people in a different way. That's amazing. But it's so true.
It's true. It just does.
Yeah.
I mean, like my grandmother said, I think I put in the book somewhere of I would if I complained to my grandmother who really went through hell all the time and for all her childhood and young adulthood, and she'd say, honey, if you take your problems and put them on a table with everybody else's problems in the world, and you have a choice, once you see everybody's problems, I promise you're going to grab yours back. Because you have to, you don't, someone always has it way worse than you,
Hmm.
always. And it was a good reminder. It was a good lesson for me to move through life that way.
Yeah. And it's not to deny your pain. Your pain is your
Nope.
pain. Your struggle is your
Yep.
struggle.
Yes.
But it is true. And that always helps me. I always think about that too. Like someone has it way, way, way worse. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why when I've gone through some of these health things, people are like, how are you so positive? I'm like, because I know people have it way worse. Even though it sounds crazy because it's brain tumors and pancreas cancers and all this crazy shit, Some people have it way worse. They didn't have the support system I had. They didn't
Right.
have, there's so many things that you can count as blessings, even in those dark
Mhm.
moments.
Yes.
And so I think, you know, there's so much in everything you just said that I want to expand on because you know, you say in the book you have to be the blessing. Your mom would say you
Mhm.
have to be the blessing in this world. And that was another thing that just moved me so much.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, because, my mom was very intentional about her life, and she knew that she was very blessed, and she knew she had a lot of opportunities later in life when she married my father. I mean, she was a woman who was born in 1940. She wanted to be a newspaper editor. She wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to be so many things. She wanted to be a journalist. And at that time, doors just weren't opening for women, whether of color or not, just women in general at that time. But what I love about my mom is she accepted that that was what it was, and was still praying for, by the time she had children, it would be different, which it was. And in the meantime, she'd always say, our blessings are not to be hoarded. When you're blessed, your job is to enjoy the blessing for sure. You shouldn't feel guilty about being blessed at all, but share your blessings, share what's been given to you, share your good luck, share as much as you can. So for my mom, that was, she loved teaching. So she chose Watts. She was president of an organization called Neighbors of Watts. And it was a group of women that mostly from Beverly Hills and the West Side would not just write checks, they would go to Watts. They would meet the families, meet the children, buy educational supplies, buy the books, buy the pencils, pens, crayons, whatever they needed. And then my mom was focused on their health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, where she would see things that she could take me to three doctors within a 3 mile radius in Beverly Hills. But in Watts, it was, oh, you have to go see the specialist. And that specialist is all the way in, is 50 minutes away. So she would literally, she's like, I just took what I had, and if I could make someone's life a little easier and lift a burden where I could, then that's what you do. If you and I love that she taught me that, and I love that she'd have me in the back of the car, and I'd be complaining like, "Mom, I want to go play soccer. I want to go skateboarding." And I love that she didn't shelter me from other people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
which was because I saw it. It was, oh right, okay, not denying that doesn't mean nothing. Just because if you're wealthy or blessed doesn't mean that you deny your pain or any challenge that you go through, but you do have to see how other people live that haven't been so fortunate for whatever reason. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's their choice, sometimes it just is what life handed them. Whatever it is, sharing the blessing, always, my mom always said, that's what you want at the end of your life. You want people to be able to say that you created a meaningful and significant life for yourself, for your family, and for others. You made a difference in other people's lives. She's like, because otherwise, all your stuff, none of it goes with you. Doesn't matter. You could just hoard all you want. And believe me, when it happened and she died and I was taking over everything and organizing everything, and a lot of her things that she collected, let's say, went to different museums, it was, oh God, she's right. She didn't take anything with her. She didn't take anything.
Yep.
But her wish was donate, 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 donate for other people to enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think that that also helped me move through the grief of continuing a legacy, continuing to share a blessing. Didn't stop me from being a blessing to other people, which is why when I wrote the book, I literally, the last manuscript, I held it up to the universe. I'm like, take it wherever you want. It's an offering, it's not about what list does it end up on, who, like, it's an offering. I pray that it lands wherever it's supposed to land.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's such a great like mantra, life lesson to live by is to always be the blessing and share the blessing. If
Yes.
we all lived like that, imagine. Like I
I
always
know.
thought be the light. I always want to be the light, right? But being the blessing and sharing the blessing is so much deeper. Like I just loved it. And this is one of the many, many lessons that I've written down that I want to make sure we share in these episodes. Before we do that, I do have to share two of our biggest supporters on our show. And funny enough, I know your mom would love them because she was the most glamorous woman we know. Macy's has been a longtime supporter of the show. And funny enough, Nicole, full circle, I used to work there. So
I know.
it's so cool to have them come back and be a part of the show and the level they have been. So we have Athena's christening coming up. I'm making sure I have some really cute things I've been noticing on there on my my wish list. So I have these cute runners I'm buying. My dad got his suit already. He got a couple suits there. I don't know which one he's wearing. But if you have a big birthday, summer vacation, or anything else coming up, Macy's Friends and Family Sale is here. It's April 25th through May 5th. You can get an extra 30% off brands that almost never go on sale, like Levi's, Calvin Klein, which was the suit Kevin told my dad to go buy, Gap, and more. So you can go to Macy's.com or you can go in store, but that doesn't stop there. Heal Squad. You can also get 15% off beauty, makeup, and more, both on store, in store, and online. So for my online shoppers, you can get free shipping. Yes, you heard, free shipping once you spend $25. You don't want to miss out on these amazing deals. So if you need some inspo, head over to my Macy's wish list using the link inside the description of this show. I have lots of really cute things up there that you guys will love. And then Nicole, as a woman, you know, hair is very important. So Way is another one of our sponsors on the show. And I have been loving their products. Their leave-in conditioner, their hair oil are my favorites right now. Do you like Way too?
I like the hair oil. I love the hair oil.
Okay, so I've been telling everybody that my hack is I use it on my wet hair. Have you tried that yet?
Oh, I haven't tried that.
Okay, so I normally do hair oil on my dry hair. But one day I was like, let me just do it on my wet hair. And then I dry it.